June 2008. Life goes on, reading goes on, and we're going to jump right into the books since I can't really remember what was happening in my life. So, the first book that I read in June of 2008 was The Home by Scott Nicholson. And what have we got here? Oh, yes. Freeman Mills. Our main character is Freeman Mills, 12 years old, a troubled child, and he is at the Wendover home for, disturbed youth or troubled youth, and he's being experimented on in room 13. This is not a good place, but it has sort of Stephen King vibes. Secret organizations experimenting on children, perhaps releasing powers. But there's also, I believe, an ancient evil, and old Freeman Mills, young Freeman Mills, is going to have to step up. Don't remember too much about this, but I enjoy Scott Nicholson stuff, and I really enjoy experiments on kids. That sounds terrible, but fictionally speaking, that's probably in my top 5 subgenres of horror. The Home by Scott Nicholson. Then we have Coffin County by Gary A. Braunbeck. This is a Cedar Hills story. He's has a number of novels that take place in Cedar Hills, Ohio. In this one, there's a serial killer who's taunting the police, perhaps manipulating the people of the town, and there's something weird because his fingerprints are unnatural in some way, and there's a cop who lost his family to a violent act, I think is what the description said, and he's trying to solve this serial killer case. As I said, I think it's the 4th book in the Cedar Hills series, and it's pretty good. It's Gary Braunbeck. And I'm pretty sure this is a leisure book. Next, we have Suckers by J.A. Conrath and Jeff Strand. And what I have here is a little limited edition from Delirium Books. They put out a bunch of books this size, little hardbacks. I think I had all of them, but I only have 3 right now. But if anyone's interested, this is available now in ebook and paperback. Paperback's like $14, and it has this story, which is just a little tiny story, and then a bunch of other short stories featuring the 2 characters that are in this. So, like, some stories by Jeff Strand, some stories by J.A. Conrath. All of that being said, Suckers is an Andrew Mayhem, Harry McGlade thriller. So Andrew Mayhem is a Jeff Strand character in the Andrew Mayhem series, and he's just an average guy that gets caught up in these crazy situations. Harry McGlade is from J.A. Conrath's Jack Daniels series, which is a book of thrillers, or a series of thrillers, with Jacqueline Daniels, who was I believe, starts out as a homicide detective. There's a ton of books. I haven't even read all of them, but I think she may have moved on to being a private eye. It's been a while since I've read one. But Harry McGlade was a supporting character in those books, and became popular enough to start starring in his own stuff. So, Andrew Mayhem, his wife, sends him out to get some spaghetti sauce, and on his way to do that, or as he's doing that, he runs into Harry McGlade, who, I believe it's Harry that tells him that he's hunting vampires. They're real, and he needs Andrew's help, and craziness ensues. The Andrew Mayhem stuff is very funny. Jeff Strand, mostly known for his comedy horror / thrillers. J.A. Conrath, the Jack Daniels stuff is pretty serious, but Harry McGlade, very funny character. He's sort of the comic relief in the Jack Daniels books, and then I think his solo stuff is much, much more lighthearted or funny. But Anyway, I like Andrew Mayhem. I like Harry McGlade. Big fan of both Jeff Strand's writing and J.A. Conrath's stuff. So, Suckers. And I didn't realize that the new Kindle slash paperback edition had a bunch of short stories in it. So I may have to buy that so I can read those stories. Because this just has the single story, Suckers. I have to flip my notebook. After that, we have Coven by Edward Lee. This is the Necro Publications edition. And back cover copy. Born in darkness, they arise. Seductive angels of murder, madness, and horror beyond imagining. Bathed in moonlight, they feed their darkest hungers in a festival of perversion and death, demented orgies that serve a cruel, unspeakable will. They are irresistible sirens in black, corrupting the living and raising the dead. Now the silent town of Exham will surrender to their loving embrace, their haunting beauty, and their ravenous need for human flesh. Surrender and die. Beauty is only skin deep. So this takes place, as it says, it's the town of Exham. There's a college, and these women in black, and it's Edward Lee, so there's a bunch of rednecks, lots of craziness going on. Apparently, it's been a while since I've read it, and that's not the apparent part. It has been a while since I've read it, and I don't remember everything, but apparently, looking at the reviews and things, synopsis, stuff online to refresh my memory, apparently there's Lovecraftian stuff going on. Edward Lee loves his Lovecraftian things. So Coven, Edward Lee, good stuff. Then we have The Lucifer Messiah by Frank Cavallo. Or Cavallo. And this takes place in Hell's Kitchen in 1946. And it's the world where there's vampires and werewolves and all sorts of hideous creatures hiding in the shadows. People don't know about them. But the Dark Queen has sort of called these creatures from around the world to congregate in Hell's Kitchen because their Dark Master is going to arise, the Lucifer Messiah, the Light Bringer. And they're going to, I guess the monsters are going to step out of the shadows if things go their way. I think this was a Medallion book, but I'm not 100% sure. Or maybe Pinnacle, one of those publishers that I was reading, but not Leisure. It's available on Amazon, but it says independently published. So I assume that's like just the new edition since the author got the rights back or something. But either way, it's The Lucifer Messiah by Frank Cavallo, or Cavallo. Then we have Severance Package by Duane Swierczynski. This is the first book by Swierczynski I read, and I picked it up because he was writing, I believe it was Moon Knight that he was writing. It was either Moon Knight or Iron Fist. But anyway, a comic book that I enjoyed. Found out that the guy writing the comic book was an author of prose books. And so I picked this up. And this, I actually didn't really need to look it up to be able to tell you what it's about. But I did look it up just in case there were some important details. I still pretty vividly remember the opening scene. And so the only note I have is that the main character is Jamie DeBroux, D-E, capital D-E, capital B-R-O-U-X. So however you pronounce that. Anyway, his boss has called him in for a meeting at 9 a.m. on Saturday. And so he's there with a bunch of his other coworkers, and his boss tells them that they have been working, they're a secret branch of an intelligence agency, and they're being shut down. And so at this meeting, there's some cookies and champagne, and the boss basically says, drink some champagne and you'll fall asleep and die peacefully. If you refuse, I'm just going to shoot you in the head. And so Jamie and his coworkers have to figure out how to get out. And the building has been turned into sort of a death trap with gas bombs, and the elevators are out, and all this other crazy stuff. How are they going to survive? How are they going to get out? There's some interesting things going on in this book. I really, really enjoyed it, which is why I've since bought pretty much everything that Duane Swierczynski has written, except for his James Patterson stuff. I have the little novellas that he did, but I actually did buy Lion and Lamb, I think was the name of it, by James Patterson and Duane Swierczynski, and I did not review it. There's no review for it on my channel because I did not like it at all. And I just saw that my stepfather is reading another one from James Patterson and Duane Swierczynski, and I'm not going to bother to read that. But if it's just Duane Swierczynski, you can't go wrong. Thrillers that each, like the Charlie Hardy trilogy, each book escalates. They get crazier and crazier. Great stuff from Duane Swierczynski. And Severance Package. Not his first novel, but the first one I read. The penultimate book that I read in June of 2008 was Clickers by J.F. Gonzalez and Mark Williams. And this is about a novelist who goes to this small seaside town, Phillipsport, Maine, and there's a giant crab attack, or an attack of giant crabs. But they're not just normal crabs. Aside from being giant, they have sort of scorpion tails, and the reason they're attacking this town is, it seems, they've been driven out of the water. What could be more horrific? What could be scaring the giant crabs? Well, you'd have to read the book to find out. So, killer animals. If you're a regular viewer, you know how much I love killer animals. My number one subgenre of horror. And this is great fun, and it led to, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more books. 4 more novels and a short story collection. And hopefully there's more on the way. But Clickers by J.F. Gonzalez and Mark Williams. Fantastic fun. And then the last book that I read in June of 2008 was The Woods Are Dark by Richard Lehman. It was not this copy. I relatively recently got this from Half Price Books because I really dug the cover. And it's even got that on the back cover. I'm going to go with back cover copy here because full transparency, as I always try to have on my channel, I don't remember a thing about this, and even reading the back cover copy, I do not remember a thing about this. I may have to reread this soon. No one drives out of Barlow. No one stays out after dark, except the delivery men who haul the slaves of Satan, and who haul like slaves of Satan, and the girls who can never say no. It was business as usual in Barlow until Johnny Robbins broke the rules and returned to the scene of the tree to save the girl he couldn't resist. The devil had his number now and wouldn't let him escape, but he ran anyway, pursued by the hounds of hell. He took the victims, and they ran for their lives from the terror that stalked the woods and ruled the roost in Barlow, California. A terror that said, join us or die. As I said, I remember nothing at all about this. So, again, it's Richard Lehman. It's maybe the third thing that I read by him. No, that can't be right. I've already talked about like The Cellar and Beast House and all that stuff, right? So this is maybe between the sixth or seventh thing that I've read by him. See, I don't know. That's how little of an impression it made. So definitely going to have to reread this. And I find it interesting that something like Severance Package didn't actually need to look it up. Like I said, I didn't remember the main character's name, but I remembered the book itself. And even Clickers, although this, I believe, was the second time that I'd read Clickers, so it doesn't quite have the same impact, but I didn't need to look at anything on Clickers to be able to tell you generally what it was about. And yet, I read this at the same time I read Severance Package and Clickers and couldn't tell you a thing. What that says about the book, I don't know. But anyway, the last book that I read in June of 2008, The Woods Are Dark by Richard Lehman. That is it. I did not think of a question ahead of time. So let's go with this. This is going to be kind of a weird one. That happens every once in a while here. Is there an author that you started reading because you heard of them from something else? Excuse me. So there are a bunch of authors that I read because they've written comic books, and I first heard of them as comic book writers. Nancy A. Collins, Andrew Vax, Greg Rucka, Dwayne Swarzynski. I'm pretty sure there are others, but those are the ones that always pop up off the top of my head when this subject comes up. I've thought about doing a video or a series of videos talking about all of these different authors that I discovered through comic books. But there are others like I can't think of his name right now, but the guy that wrote Undercover Brother, which I love that movie. I think it's hilarious. And he's written other movies, I believe. I want to say he wrote... Well, I'm not going to guess at the other things he wrote, because if I'm wrong, it'll be truly embarrassing. But this is kind of the reverse. He's an author, and I didn't realize that. I'd read his stuff long before I saw Undercover Brother, and then learned that he was the writer of Undercover Brother. But if I'd seen that movie first, I definitely would have sought out his books. Just turns out I happen to have read them first. So that's just a sort of a reverse of what I'm talking about. So can you think of anybody, maybe someone who wrote and or directed a movie, or is actually an actor, or again, wrote a comic book, sings, anything where you knew this person from something else, found out they were a writer, and decided to check out their books? And I'm not quite talking about like when an actor decides they're going to write something, like Richard Belzer. He's a weird case because he was a stand-up comedian who became an actor and wrote nonfiction before he wrote some fiction. But like David Duchovny, I believe, has written a book or two, and I had somebody else in my head and completely forgot. But I'm not quite talking about that. But I suppose that's fair. If you found out like an actor you admired wrote a book, hopefully you understand the question and can answer it in the comments below. If you have any comments, questions, or corrections, please put those in the comments below. Comments are open for spoilers. Just post a spoiler warning. We try to be polite here on my channel. Please like, share, and subscribe, all the usual YouTube stuff. And if you care to follow me on other social media, I'll have links for my Instagram and Blue Sky in the description below. And that's all I have for you this week. So until next week, read more books.